Okay, students, so I'm going to talk about the castle project today. And if you're doing these projects in the correct order, which I hope you are, um, you should have just finished the Dragon Eye project where we focus on creating different values with pencil. So this time we're going to be switching to ink or pen, and we're going to be creating different values with ink, which is going to use some different techniques. So you can see that the learning objective is that students will use and understand basic art procedures and techniques for different types of art mediums. So like I said, we're going to be using different techniques since we're working with pen and ink. The lesson outline is the overview, which I'm doing now, and then we're going to do some ink value scales, which will be different than your pencil value scales. And then we're going to compare and contrast some artworks using different art mediums. Then I will do the castle drawing demo where I show you how to draw castles, and I will try to show you different types of shapes you can use to create castles because there's lots of different ways that you can draw them. Then you're going to have the planning sheet. So I want you to think about how you want your castle to look. You know, everyone's is going to look different, so I want you to have some time to think about what you want it to look like and plan it out. And then once you have that, you're going to start drawing your castle. And when you're done, you're going to do the artist statement. Now, the artist statement is going to be a little bit different this time because usually you just explain to me what you did during the creative process, you know, how you got your drawing to look a certain way. For this one, I want you to also have a story to go with your drawing. So, you know, sometimes pictures are really good at telling us a story, but I want you to actually write a short story to go with your castle. So you can think about that when you're planning your castle out. That might change the way you want your drawing to look depending on what kind of story you want to have. So when you're drawing your castle, the first thing you're going to do whenever you know what you want it to look like is, for one, you might want to look at some pictures. I always suggest that. And then you might want to break your castle down into shapes to simplify the drawing. So we can see this very simple castle drawing here at the bottom of this slide. Now, although these are just basic shapes, if you add detail and some shading, it could look like a pretty sophisticated drawing. So there's lots of different shapes you can use. You can use cylinders, rectangles, triangles, circles, all kinds of things. You can see some of those being used here. And then when you get to the shading part, since we're going to be shading with ink, you're going to be using specific techniques. Those techniques are hatching, cross-hatching, and stippling. So that's how you're going to do your shading. So you can see I have them labeled here and I have some examples. So hatching is just straight lines over and over again. So you can see that even though you're not shading like you would with pencil, you still have dark values and light values. And these value scales that you're seeing here is similar to what you're going to be doing when you do the ink value scale activity. Cross hatching is just that. It's just like hatching, except instead of lines just being right next to each other, they crisscross. And then we have stippling, which is dots. Okay, now if you decide to do the stippling technique, which you can use a combination of these techniques. If you decide to do the stippling technique, make sure you're not too aggressive with your pen or marker or whatever you're using because you don't want to use it when you're putting the dots on there. You don't want to press down too hard. Okay, so you can see I have some examples here. So there's lots of different ways you can do this project, and that's one of the reasons I want you to take some time to plan out what you want your castle to look like. So you can see this castle has some hatching on the side, so we can assume that this side is in shadow because it's darker, so maybe the sun's over here on this side. You can also see that it looks kind of old and ruined, and that kind of gives the castle a certain feel and character to it. Whereas this castle looks a little more whimsical and playful. So whenever you're drawing your castle, like I said, you might want to think about what kind of story you want to have, and that may affect what kind of castle you draw. So we've got this big giant castle here. Okay, so when you're giving your artwork a story, you want to be creative. So you might want to think about what could happen at your castle. Be descriptive in your writing. So, you know, have some details so we can understand what's going on, what time period the story is in, who is in the story, what's it about, what's the ending going to be like. And that'll help you figure out not only what you want your story to be like, but maybe what your castle will look like. So I want you guys to have fun with this project and be as creative as possible.